Hi everyone, and welcome back to our channel. And today I'm going to be doing a redo of a video that I did a while back called Signs and Symptoms of a Heart Center Activation. It seems as though the one I had disappeared, or I deleted it by mistake, I don't know. But in any case, we're going to go ahead and we're going to give it a bash here. And I'd like to make mention here in the beginning that there are so many variables when it comes to heart center chakra awakening and what the person may go through. Please keep that in mind when you're listening to the video. I am not trying to set up a criteria or a precedent that a person must go through. Each and every person will experience it differently. However, there are some, if I can, I call them ingredients in a heart center awakening that are all seem to be manifesting for each and every person in some way, shape, or form. And they don't necessarily manifest in the order that I'm going to be talking about. They can be hither than thou, if you will. So what I'm going to say at the beginning right now at this particular point is we're now at a point where we're having children, and I've seen them, and others have mentioned to me this also, 7, 8, and 9 years of age, and teenagers, obviously, through the whole teenage situation, older adults, and everything in between, now going through heart center activation and symptoms. So I think one can take this video rather seriously and put it away for future reference because you may need it. Unfortunately, our society is not oriented, nor does it actually recognize in any venue except the spiritual community the activation of the heart center chakra or even kundalini awakening. So what happens is when you have a person basically in the general public, or anyone for that matter, who begins a heart center activation, the first reaction they're going to go through is when they start experiencing the symptoms is fear, and in some cases panic, which is natural. That's what happens with people when something is coming toward you, you don't understand it, you have no information on it, you have no knowledge of it. It's a natural reaction with people. The other thing that I want to mention here before I get too far in the video is this needs to be taken very, very seriously when it happens in a person's life. To give you a comparison of how serious I consider this to be, I'm sure many parents out there who had their first child can recall and remember very well what their life was like before they had their first child, and what it was like immediately after the birth of your first child. And I believe the expression you can use that would be appropriate is life as you knew it is over. And I can safely say, after 30 years of being exposed to the spiritual community and exposed to literally thousands of people going through the heart center activation, I can safely say this. When the heart center activation begins, the physical, mental, and emotional symptoms begin. Life, as you knew it, is over. Period. And I'm sure I'm going to get some comments on that one. So let's go through some of the physical symptoms that can be experienced. And I'm going to give you only a small portion of them here. You can start experiencing pain in the middle of the chest, right in smack in the middle. A burning sensation. You can begin to experience a spinning or a heat sensation combined with difficulty at times in breathing, and also fluctuating or rapid or irregular physical heartbeat at the same time. Now what's happening is whenever there's something happening at an etheric or a spiritual or a soul body level, there is going to be a reaction in the physical body. And it's at this particular point in time that you begin these symptoms when I say again, life as you knew it is now over. Usually what will begin to take place, and the most important part of it, begins at this particular point. And keep in mind here, I'm only generalizing here. I'm not trying to set a precedent or to say to a person that this has to happen or it's not valid, because everybody's experience will be valid and everybody's experience will be unique to them based on certain factors, and those factors could be environment, upbringing, belief systems that you've incorporated, be they from culture, religion, and also the environment, the food intake that you've taken into consideration, and also your family tree history, going back quite a few generations. All of these things are going to come into play. So the very first thing that's going to happen is after you go through all of these symptoms is a good number of you. And please imagine if you're an adult sitting here watching this video, just imagine for a moment, think of when you went through the heart center activation. Imagine what it might be like for someone who's 9 or 10 years old. Just think about that for a moment. Rapid heartbeat, burning sensation in the middle of the chest, wild emotional feelings, and they haven't got a clue what's going on, and they're going to depend upon you. So I hope a lot of people kind of put this video in their favorite section and keep it around, because I can assure you, you're going to need it down the road as we go along. So the first thing that's going to take place, and many of you will be able to agree with me on this point, is immediately as the heart center begins to activate, a good many of you will go to the doctor and you will have a lot of tests and you will find out that there's nothing wrong with you. And that in itself can be quite a frightening experience. Also, what begins to happen is this. The most important phase of the heart center activation is this. Based on the experience that I have seen with other people and my own self, the one major thing that's going to happen, two major things actually that are going to happen immediately as the heart center chakra begins to activate, no matter your age capacity, but especially in the older generation, I'm talking from, let's say, 20 years old and going onward, is your personality is going to go through a radical change. Now, your personality is composed of a whole host of different components, ideas, thoughts, belief system, input from your parents, genetic and hereditary imprints, and they can be functional, they can be dysfunctional. I mean, there's no one on the planet who's perfect at this particular point in time. So what's actually happening is, you might say, for lack of a better expression, your soul has stepped into the picture and we're activating the mechanisms for you to become eventually and inevitably a much better, superior person than you are now. And some will say, well, Mel, that may be the case now, but it sure as hell wasn't the case when it all started. And the reason being is your personality is going to go through the radical changes. Now, let me give you an example of some of the changes that take place. I have seen people have relationships and marriages that they're in completely fall apart after the heart center activation. And the reason for that is a change in belief systems, a change in ideology, a change in philosophy, but most importantly, a change in their personality. I have seen people make changes in their career choices and give up high-paying jobs in very high positions in society. And you imagine it, and it can happen during the course of a heart center activation as the chakra begins to grow and evolve. The other thing that comes up and into play is belief systems. And belief systems are something that we've incorporated, and we have many of them. And these are going to change dramatically also. These belief systems can involve the mental body and also the emotional body. Again, depending upon your personality type, and if you are aware of what your personality type is, you can actually get a glimmer of what kind of experiences that you're going to have. Now, included in all of that is, and I want to just touch on this for a moment, is at the same time that the heart center chakra begins to open and begin to express the changes that are going on, to complicate matters even worse, you can actually have a kundalini awakening simultaneously going on at the same time. And to really make it more spicy, you can even have another person involved that may be the activator or the catalyst for this particular experience. So, having said all of that to you, one can imagine the complete chaos and the complete insanity, if you will, for a lengthy period of time of what can go on. The experiences just can go on and on and on. And I think the message that I would like to convey in this video is, having gone through this for years myself, the whole of the process is dictating at a very high level of consciousness, improving you as a person. However, there's another part that comes into play here that I want to mention at this time. Many people question where they're going, that all of a sudden the plans that they had, the careers that they had, and the belief systems that they had all seem to be stripped or falling away. And what happens is, over a period of time, it appears as though the heart center chakra has taken over complete control of the individual, and that's the way it seems to manifest. How many of you can remember when your heart center activation took place, and one of the symptoms that you experienced was a complete loss of control? You may have attempted to try to turn this thing off, or do something so it would shut down, or tell it to go away, and nothing you did worked. So you found out right off the bat that you, personally, from a conscious level, once the heart center chakra began to activate, were no longer in control. So if anyone out there thinks that you're in control of your life and you've got your shit together, go back to the time when your heart center actually activated and the signs and symptoms were all becoming very clear to you, and take a look and see how much control you had over the heart center. It did what it wanted to do, and it didn't give a diddly squat how you felt and how you looked at it from your conscious perspective and point of view. So what this does is, at this particular point, it will get an individual to the point where they want to begin to explore, and usually they will bumble into the spiritual community and start taking in a lot of information. And here again, one needs to be wary and cautious of what they take in, because as you're going through, and I want to mention this because it is important, when the heart center chakra opens, please do understand you're going through the most important change in your life, bar none. Even more important than puberty when you went through that. Because in reality, if you look at it from, say, my perspective for a moment, you're literally going through puberty again. But it's a spiritual puberty, that higher part of yourself, you can call it whatever label you want. You can call it God, you can call it Krishna, you can call it Buddha, you can call it higher self, you can call it whatever you want. I don't think it really cares what you call it, because it's going to go ahead and it's going to do its thing. And how long this stage takes for each individual will vary. Obviously, when you're going through this and your life is out of control and you're experiencing the anxiety, the depression, the happiness, the high phases, the low phases, because you'll experience a lot of that when the heart center chakra activates. One day you can be higher than a kite, and the next day you're low. So you're going from back and forth and up and down and all over the place. But again, all of this has a purpose, excuse me, and the purpose is to, in the long term, have you come out as a better person. Now, as I mentioned, the kundalini activation can also take place at the same time, which adds to it, simply because what's happened is the kundalini energy, which has become now standard kind of expression in a whole lot of people who have heart center activation, does its part. And its part basically is to remodel, if I can put it that way, the physical body by clearing out hereditary genetic traits and opening up other parts of the chakra system in the physical body, but most importantly, the heart center chakra. Also here, I want to touch on one thing that I've noticed to be a main theme in heart center symptoms, signs and symptoms. And I've mentioned this many, many times over the years in my videos, and it's as follows. One of the most important things that I hear everybody on the planet talking about is they have this expression, especially in the spiritual community and in the general population, that love is going to solve everything on our planet. And yet, when they experience that energy coming out of the heart center, people tend to call it unconditional love. But it doesn't feel like it, does it, when your life goes to pot? And everybody suddenly, somewhere along the line during this heart chakra activation, start seeing a lot of their belief systems starting falling by the wayside. And one of them that falls by the wayside very, very quickly is your concept of love. Suddenly the concept that you have had up to this point, and I'm talking about the older generations here, seems to fly out the window and you're starting all over again. So you're learning by experience what love is. Another one of the things that happens during the heart center activation, and it happens quite often initially in the beginning, is after a person goes through, in some cases, what people like to call the dark night of soul, which is basically simply the process of changes at a mental, emotional, and an etheric level, excuse me. What takes place is the concept of love begins to change, and belief systems are beginning to form within the person. Now, I want to talk about belief systems here for a moment, because what's happened is the sum total of our personalities and how we live our life and how we express it in terms of happiness, well-being, and health is all dictated by our belief systems, which we've had passed from one generation to the next. As we know now that certain diseases or physical conditions can be passed from one generation to the next. So what's happening is all of that is being remodeled, retooled, redefined within the physical body also. So there's a lot of things going on at the same time. Now, what happens after a period of time is gently, of course, after belief systems have changed, personality has been modified. And when I talk about personality being modified, what this process is doing is taking the basic person, as it were, and reestablishing within them. They may have had some of these qualities already as a natural part of their personality. But the purpose of the heart center activation is to connect with that higher aspect of yourself to radically rechange and rebuild your personality and eliminate old belief system. So what happens after a while is the person would acquire such things as patience, wisdom. They would be honest, sincere, compassionate, but not a wuss, okay? And they would have the finer qualities of personality. When you have the finer qualities of personality, one can use the energy or co-creative abilities that the heart center are going to bestow upon the person at a later time. Now, the other thing that can happen after a heart center awakening also is suddenly a person who is aware that they have certain little skills or gifts can suddenly have them flash into a much more creative way of manifesting. And you can have people who will experience stuff in the activation of the heart center chakra that will seem and appear to be like new ability. So there's a whole gamut of things going on that are crucially important. My suggestion to everyone, if you're a parent and you have a child or teenager going through a heart center activation, you need to get informed and you need to get connected with that child or that teenager quickly, very quickly, especially if they're going through puberty. The other thing is, if you're going through a heart center activation yourself, you need to be very gentle with yourself, and you need to be very protective of yourself. Because you're in, as I mentioned in the first part of the video, in my opinion, that's just my opinion, the most important phase of development in your physical life that will last the rest of this particular lifetime. The outcome of a heart center awakening is usually always positive, creative in the end. But in the beginning, it can be a very hazardous journey because of lack of understanding and because people don't have the information that's available. Now, I don't want to go on too much longer with this video, and if I see a lot of positive input kind of thing or questions of further information, I will go ahead and do another one. But I do want to mention here also, before I kind of end this one here, one of the most important roles of the heart center chakra, it is going to be the, I'm going to put it this way, the alignment factor in the opening or the defining of the rest of the chakra system, which is going to change during this heart center activation, also as part of the package. Because, and I want to put it this way, because we're becoming more than ever what we were before by going through a radical change in personality, the elimination of belief systems, the rebirth of the mental body, the cleansing and purging of the emotional body. We are moving into the development of a 12 chakra system. Because of this development that begins initially in the heart center chakra, what happens is we can no longer function at these higher vibrations and higher states of consciousness in a 7 chakra system. So the 12 chakra system becomes part of the package that is beginning to open. And as this goes along, the final thing that I want to mention here, depending upon the person and the experiences that they're having, what will take place is they will extend it or shorten it by their participation and simply, I'm not going to use the word surrender to the process. I'm going to use the term go with the flow of it at this particular point in time. Okay. Now, I'm going to leave it there at this particular point. If there is more interest, I'll do more, but I don't want to run this into a 40-minute video here. That would be pointless at this particular point in time. Okay, been a pleasure, and I hope this gives you some information that is useful to you. And have a great day, everyone.